They didn't even wait for the last plate of jollof rice to be packed away from the funeral reception. Two of his uncles, men who had eaten in my house, smiled in my face, called me daughter, stormed into our home like dogs on heat. Their wrappers flapped carelessly beneath their agbatas, but their eyes held no grief, no shame. Out, Uncle Bode barked, his finger pointing directly at me. I thought I heard wrong. What? You heard him, Uncle Tio added, dragging his walking stick across the polished marble tiles like he was claiming territory. You have no child for Chijioke. This house belongs to the family. You were just a guest. I blinked. My late husband's picture was still on the center table, smiling gently at me. My stomach twisted. My body went cold. Get her out, he shouted again, now facing the domestic staff. Throw her things outside. Everything happened in slow motion. The housemaids looked at me with wide eyes, unsure. But when they saw me frozen, shaking and confused, they turned. One by one they began to carry out my boxes. Clothes, shoes, even my framed wedding photos. All of it landed by the dusty gutter outside. A neighbor passing by stopped, horrified. Madam Linda, what is going on? She asked, adjusting her head tie. I could barely answer. I clutched my wrapper, trying to stop my knees from buckling. They said I don't belong here, I whispered. The mansion on Gerald Road in Okoye that I had helped decorate. The home where I had buried my placenta after our first miscarriage. The same home where I served 3-course meals during Christmas. It wasn't mine anymore. I slept in a one-room boys' quarters that night, offered to me by a sympathetic gateman from the next compound. Mosquitoes sang their own funeral in my ears. My throat burned with tears I couldn't afford to shed. In one moment I was a widow. In the next a beggar. But they had no idea. They didn't know what my husband had left behind. They didn't know about the secret meeting with the lawyer just 2 weeks before he died. They didn't know the inheritance was real. And worse for them, it was all in my name. 2 months earlier. I remember it like it happened yesterday. Chijioke had come home with a strange glow on his face. He dropped his keys on the marble countertop and hugged me tighter than usual. Linda, he whispered. My father's estate, it's finally been released. I didn't understand. Estate? But I thought. They said it was tied up in court for years. But now everything has been settled. The properties in Johannesburg, the oil shares, even the offshore accounts in Mauritius. All of it. I stared at him. How much are we talking about? He looked at me slowly. $500 million. I staggered back. 5 what? 500, he repeated. Million. USD. I was silent. It felt like fiction. But he wasn't done. I already spoke to Mr. MBA, our lawyer. I'm putting the entire portfolio in your name. I trust you more than anyone. In case anything ever happens. I hit his arm. Stop talking like that. He smiled. I'm serious. People change when money is involved. I've seen what my uncles did to my dad when he was sick. If anything happens to me, I want you to be protected. You hear? I never thought anything would happen so soon. Just 3 weeks later, Chijioke was gone, killed in a suspicious car accident along the 3rd Mainland Bridge. The police said it was brake failure. But something never sat right with me. Especially now. Especially when, before the burial, Uncle Bode pulled me aside and asked, Did Chijioke leave any sensitive documents with you? I lied. I said no. And that's when I noticed it, the glint in his eyes. Back in the boys' quarters, I opened the only thing I had left, a brown envelope my husband had made me promise to keep safe. Inside, legal documents showing I was now the owner of all Chijioke's international assets. Power of attorney. Multiple offshore bank statements. I was not just a widow. I was a silent billionaire. But I knew I had to move wisely. These men would not just back down. If they could throw me out like trash, what else were they capable of? I called Mr. MBA the lawyer. They've taken everything, I said. He answered calmly. But they haven't taken your power, Linda. In fact, they don't even know who owns them yet. What do I do? Disappear for now. Let them dance. When you return, it won't be to explain. It'll be to reign. So I did just that. I moved to a quiet flat in Aja. I changed my SIM card. I cut off everyone who knew me in that part of Lagos. I began planning silently. I contacted the international bank managers. I started consolidating all the foreign assets. I sold one property in Cape Town, another in Abuja. In less than 4 weeks, I had enough liquidity to shake the bones of anyone who dared me. But I didn't go flashy. Not yet. I let them believe they had won. Back in Okoye, they threw lavish parties. Uncle Teo changed the house gate from black to gold. They started driving new Range Rovers, posting pictures on Facebook with captions like, "God did it." But the God they were thanking was about to snatch back the blessing. Because every single property they touched, every business they tried to sell, every account they accessed, was mine. And when I returned to Banana Island, it wasn't to visit. It was to build. I purchased a new estate, not far from the same men who spat on my grief. But this time I wasn't the woman crying behind a gate. I was the woman with the keys. And their worst nightmare had just arrived. They threw her out with nothing, unaware she held the keys to everything. In next chapter, you'll discover the love story that started it all, and the shocking truth behind her husband's death. Don't miss what happens next. Like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe for more real African stories of revenge, power, and unshakable dignity. It wasn't always pain. Before the betrayal, before the funeral turned eviction, before uncles turned hyenas in Igbata, it was love. The kind of love that made you feel like Lagos traffic didn't exist. That made Sunday stew taste like a 5-star banquet. Chijioke wasn't a flashy man. No gold chains, no loud voice, no hollow promises. He walked like peace and spoke like safety. I met him on a rainy Thursday under an umbrella that wasn't mine. I had been standing at CMS bus stop, shivering from the sudden downpour, using my handbag to shield my new wig from the sky's mischief. Just when I gave up and started running, someone tapped my shoulder and said, "You'll catch a cold. Let's share this." He didn't ask. He just tilted the umbrella gently over me. By the time we reached the next junction, I was laughing. He had made a joke about Okada riders being the true avengers of Lagos, and for some reason I laughed like he had dropped stand-up gold. That was Chijioke. Calm, clever, warm. Our first date was at a roadside umla joint. "You don't like fancy places?" I had teased. He grinned. "If you eat yudu with a person and still want to see them again, they're real." He was right. I had never met a man who listened so much, who remembered my sister's birthday, who helped me iron my blouse before my job interviews. He knew when to hold my hand without asking. He knew when to just sit beside me in silence. Chijioke came from old money, but you wouldn't know. His father, Chief Ibube, was a tycoon who built his wealth on oil and shipping routes from Port Harcourt to Ghana. But his son? He wore jeans more than kaftans and preferred moi to filet mignon. His uncles hated that about him. "He wants to carry the family name and give it to one market woman," I once heard Uncle Teo sneer. That market woman was me. I was born in Surulere, raised by a single mother who sold fabric in Tejuosho. I wasn't ashamed of my background, but I knew how society whispered, especially when money was involved. When Chijioke told his family he wanted to marry me, chaos erupted. "She's barren," one auntie claimed. "She's after your inheritance," another declared. But Chijioke held my hand in front of all of them and said, "If I marry anyone else, I'll be betraying my own heart." The wedding was modest. He said he wanted something small. But the tension was heavy. Only a few family members showed up. His uncles never forgave him. We tried for children. Oh, how we tried. Miscarriage after miscarriage. Nights filled with quiet sobbing and days where I forced smiles for church members. "You're not less of a woman," Chijioke would whisper, wrapping me in his arms. "But they think I am." "I don't care what they think. I married you. Not their opinions." He built me up daily. And I built with him. We grew a logistics company together. Small deliveries at first, then cross-state contracts. I handled finances and customer care. He oversaw operations. Even when the inheritance drama started abroad, he kept his head low. He didn't want the wealth to change us. But it changed them. It started with Uncle Bode. He began calling again, suddenly warm and friendly. Just checking on you both. Family is all we have, you know. He offered to introduce us to big investors. He showed up uninvited to our house with spiritual advice and palm wine. Chijioke played along, but I noticed how he never let his guard down. One night he said to me, "They smell it. The inheritance. They're coming." What do? We stay quiet. We act small. Until the papers are in place. 2 days before his death, he met with Mr. MBA, the family's lawyer. He returned that night with a strange calmness. "I signed it," he said. "What?" "The power of attorney. The full estate. It's yours now, Linda." My mouth fell open. "All of it?" He nodded. "Every property. Every account. Every single cent." "Why?" "Because if anything happens to me, they'll come like vultures. And I won't be here to protect you. But with this, you'll protect yourself." I wept into his chest that night, afraid of shadows that hadn't yet arrived. And then, the crash. They said his brakes failed on 3rd Mainland Bridge. But I saw the car. I saw the clean slice across the tire. I saw the dent that didn't match the collision story. I knew. I didn't have proof. But I knew. The funeral was barely a week later. And the vultures came. Now, in this quiet flat in Aja, the past played like a silent movie in my mind. His laughter. His voice. His protection. I had lost him. But I hadn't lost what he gave me. I opened the envelope again. Studied the documents. Every signature. Every seal. The men celebrating in my husband's house had no idea they were drinking my wine, sleeping under my roof, using cars funded by me. But I wouldn't storm in like a mad widow. No. That's what they expected. Instead, I would rebuild. I would move smarter. I would become a shadow too dangerous to touch. And when I returned, I wouldn't come to explain. I would come to own. The floor was cold. The pillow was a folded wrapper. And the ceiling had a crack shaped like a question mark, staring down at me like it too was confused by my fall from grace. I had gone from luxury sheets in Okoye to a cement floor in Aja. No fan, no light, just the hum of mosquitoes and the occasional cockroach daring to crawl across my leg. The woman who had once served jollof rice to governors now boiled water on a charcoal stove outside, beside a street boy rolling weed. Nobody knew me here. Nobody cared. And that was exactly what I needed. I spent my mornings sitting by the corner of the mini market, blending pepper for one of the women there just to earn 2,000 Nigerian nairas a day. My fingernails were stained red from the peppers. My feet burned from standing for hours. But I didn't complain. I needed to disappear, to become invisible. Meanwhile, my late husband's uncles were throwing parties in the mansion I once decorated with flower vases from Morocco. They had changed the furniture, removed my wedding portrait, and even replaced the gatekeeper with one of their own boys. But I heard everything. I knew everything. One morning while blending pepper, I saw something that made my heart race. A black Lexus parked just outside the market square. From it stepped a man in a crisp suit with eyes too familiar. I recognized him. Chuka. One of Chijioke's cousins from the village. I quickly turned away, hiding behind sacks of onions. My heart beat like thunder. "Linda?" I heard someone call. I froze. It wasn't Chuka. It was an old woman, Mama Nkechi, who sold ogbono next to me. "You dey hide?" she asked. I smiled weakly. "No. Just dizzy from the sun." She squinted at me. "You resemble that woman wey dem drive Comet for news. That fine woman. The widow of that rich man." I quickly interrupted. "I get that a lot. No be me." She laughed and went back to her stall. But that encounter shook me. Later that day, as I sat under a mango tree, counting my pepper-stained earnings, I heard a voice behind me. "I thought it was you." I turned slowly. It was Ada Ora. I blinked hard. Was I hallucinating? "Ada?" She rushed forward and hugged me tightly. Ada Ora was my old friend from university, someone I hadn't seen in nearly 10 years. We used to dream of building businesses together. She had moved abroad and I lost contact. "How did you?" "I saw your face on Facebook. Someone posted pictures from the funeral. Then someone else shared a photo of your things outside the gate. Linda, I've been searching for you. I broke down. For the first time since Chijiok's death, I let myself cry in front of someone. Proper aching sobs. She held me for a long time. That night she took me in. Her apartment in Sangatito was small but neat. She gave me clean clothes, made tea and sat with me like old times. Linda, she said softly, tell me everything. From the beginning. And I did. From the day Chijiok told me about the inheritance, to the night I was kicked out like a thief. I told her about the documents, the will, the offshore accounts, everything. She stared in disbelief. Wait, you mean you're the legal heir to all of it? I nodded. Jesus. Then slowly her lips curled into a smirk. Then let's make them sweat. Adaora was now a business consultant. She had experience managing large portfolios and legal loopholes. Over the next 2 weeks, she helped me begin the most silent, dangerous revenge mission Lagos had ever seen. We made a list. Not of people to confront, but of assets to reclaim. There was the Apapa warehouse, the land in Lekki, the bakery franchise in Enugu, the private accounts linked to the logistics company. We contacted the legal departments attached to each one. Letters were sent. Quiet freezes were placed. Unknown to my husband's uncles, the businesses they had claimed ownership of were beginning to choke. Uncle Bode first noticed something was wrong when he tried to withdraw 3 million Nigerian nairas from a company account, and the bank manager said it was under new signatory. Next, Uncle Teo found that the deed to the Lekki land no longer bore the family's name. It had been officially transferred to Mrs. Linda Adebayo, weeks before Chijiok's death. Phone calls started flying. Cousins started fighting. The house in Okoye became a war zone. Meanwhile, I was still blending pepper by day, smiling like a nobody, and rebuilding my empire by night. The final blow came when the estate agent managing the Banana Island mansion called. Ma, he said respectfully over the phone, I just received official confirmation from the Central Land Registry. The Okoye property is now under your sole ownership. I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at the ceiling. The same ceiling that had once mocked me. Ma, he said again. I'll be visiting it very soon, I said finally. Shall I prepare a staff team to welcome you? I smiled. No. Let them be there. Let them open the door. Adaora and I sat that night in her kitchen, laughing over EBA and egusi soup. You know you're now a billionaire, right? She teased. I know, I smiled. And they don't even know their party is over. I leaned back and whispered. They celebrated my shame too early. But now, I'm going to remind them who Chijiok chose. The same wrapper. I wore the same wrapper they threw me out in. Faded, stained, with one torn edge stitched by hand. It was intentional. I wanted them to see me and remember the day they thought they won. Adaora parked just outside the gates of the Banana Island mansion. The same house where my wedding pictures once hung. Where I once watered the hibiscus plants by hand because the gardener didn't understand how much my mother's flowers meant to me. I can come in with you, Adaora offered. No, I replied, tying the wrapper firmly. I need them to see me alone first. I walked to the gate slowly, my slippers clapping against the interlocked bricks like an echo from the past. The new security man, a young boy in his 20s with sunburned cheeks, looked up from his stool and laughed. Madam, this is private estate. You go need appointment. I didn't say a word. Instead, I reached into the small leather bag Adaora had given me and pulled out a laminated document with the family's legal seal. One glance at the signature and property stamp, and the young man straightened. He read it, then read it again. His eyes widened. I'll wait. Wait, Ma. He pressed the intercom. Sir, you need to come down. There's a woman here. She has papers. 3 minutes later, Uncle Bode appeared at the gate in a loosely tied kaftan, a toothpick between his lips and arrogance in his eyes. When he saw me, he smirked. You again? I said nothing. He turned to the guard. This one? Don't you recognize her? That's the woman we threw out. Jobless widow. Always looking for attention. The security man looked back and forth between us. Sir, but this paper, he stammered. I stepped forward and spoke calmly. That house, I said, pointing past him, was signed over to me by my husband before his death. The land registry confirms it. The company files confirm it. The accounts are mine. The deeds are mine. And you are trespassing. His laugh cracked the silence. Loud. Mocking. Deeds? Madam, go and rest Jer. You've been eating expired beans. What nonsense are you saying? I pulled out the second document. It was the updated land ownership file from the Lagos Ministry of Housing. It bore Chijioke's signature and the legal transfer to Mrs. Linda Adebayo, fully authorized, dated, and notarized. I've come to enter my house, I said again. You can leave with your pride. Or you can wait for the letter from the court bailiffs. His toothpick fell from his mouth. For the first time in weeks, I saw fear crawl across his face. Wait, Linda, let's talk like family. You're still grieving. Don't let bitterness make you do foolish things. I smiled slowly. Bitterness is when you strip a woman of her home days after her husband dies. This is justice. The gate opened, and I stepped inside. I could hear voices from the living room as I entered. Uncle Teo still in his wrapper. One of the cousins, shirtless, drinking malt. Another woman I didn't recognize was walking around with a headscarf, spraying air freshener. They froze when they saw me. What's going on? Teo asked. Why is she here? A cousin added. I walked to the center of the room. Do you all remember when you threw me out? You said I was a burden. Said the house belonged to your bloodline. Well, surprise. I am now your landlord. They all started talking at once. This is madness. You forged something, didn't you? She's lying. I dropped the thick brown envelope on the table. Inside that file are the original documents. The ones you thought I didn't have. I walked through the house like I was meeting an old friend. The curtains had changed. The pictures were gone. But I could still feel Chijioke's presence in every corner. I paused at the hallway where he used to wait for me after work. I took a deep breath. They followed me, still shouting behind. You think this will end well for you? Uncle Bode barked. You can't just walk in here and expect. But he stopped mid-sentence when the security man entered again. Madam, the estate management is on the phone. They said they've confirmed your ownership. Do you want them to assist in evacuation? I turned slowly and locked eyes with Bode. Evacuate yourselves. I'll give you till sundown. They didn't leave quietly. Curses. Threats. Empty warnings. One cousin even pushed over a flower vase in anger. But by 6 p.m. they were gone. The silence after they left was heavy. I stood in the doorway for a long time, unsure if I wanted to cry or scream. I did neither. Instead, I opened the living room windows wide. Let the air in. Let the memory of pain out. Adaora returned that night with jollof and grilled fish. Homecoming meal, she smiled. I set the table silently. We ate in the same dining room where they once served egusi to family members who laughed while stripping me of dignity. This house is yours, Adaora said. Not just legally, emotionally. Take it back. And I would, piece by piece, wall by wall, I would repaint the memories and reclaim my joy. But as I cleared the dishes that night, something unexpected happened. The landline rang. Nobody had used it in years. I picked it up cautiously. Hello. A voice I didn't recognize replied, calm and deep. Mrs. Linda Adebayo? Yes. There's something your husband left with us. Something not included in the original inheritance package. We need to speak. In person. The man's voice on the phone had been calm, formal, and precise. Too formal for someone who claimed to know my husband. Mrs. Linda Adebayo, he repeated. We need to speak. In person. It's about something your husband left in our custody. Something significant. I was silent. Who are you? I finally asked. My name is Mr. Cole. I'm an executive partner at Zenith Black Holdings. Your husband was one of our clients. Zenith Black? That name rang a bell. I'd heard Chijioke mention them once, a long time ago, when he was applying for dual citizenship and setting up overseas accounts. I don't understand, I said cautiously. I've already received his will. Yes, ma'am, he replied, but this is separate. It was a private agreement, and only you have the clearance to access it. Where? I asked. He paused before saying, Okoye, number 17 Bishop Oboyed Street. Tomorrow. 11 a.m. Please bring identification. The call ended, and the room suddenly felt heavier. That night, I lay awake on the cold luxury sheets of the mansion that was now mine again. But I didn't feel victorious. I felt curious, nervous. Why would Chijioke keep something hidden, even from me? I thought we had shared everything. Unless... I turned over and stared at the ceiling. Could this be a trap? Was someone trying to get close just to hurt me again? Adaora was already up and dressed the next morning. I'll come with you, she said immediately. No, I replied. Let me do this alone. She nodded, though I saw the hesitation in her eyes. Just text me when you get there. The office at number 17 Bishop Oboyed Street didn't look like a vault. It looked like an art gallery. White walls. Security cameras in every corner. The receptionist spoke in barely above a whisper. Mr. Cole is expecting you, she said, handing me a visitor's tag with my name already printed on it. I was led through 2 security doors before arriving at a minimalist office lined with thick soundproof glass. A man in his late 50s rose from behind a large black desk. He wore a gray suit with no tie, and his eyes were sharp but not unkind. Mrs. Adebayo, he said, shaking my hand. Please sit. I sat, clutching my handbag like a shield. What is this about? He opened a drawer and pulled out a small black case. Inside was a USB drive with Chijioke's initials engraved on it. Before your husband passed, Mr. Cole said, he recorded a private message, along with instructions for a secondary trust fund and an offshore real estate portfolio. He told us not to release it unless he died unexpectedly. I blinked. Secondary trust? Yes, he nodded. It's worth approximately $92 million US, independent of the inheritance you've already received. These assets were placed under your name but hidden from public and family access. I was stunned. He slid the USB across the table. He left a video message. Would you like to watch it here? I nodded slowly. He inserted the drive into a small wall screen. The lights dimmed. And then, there he was. Chijioke. Wearing his blue Ankara shirt, sitting on the edge of our former bed. His face was tired but smiling. My Linda, he began, if you're watching this, then I'm gone. And not the way I planned. I gasped softly. I wanted us to travel. To finally rest. But life doesn't always wait. He took a deep breath. I didn't tell anyone about this account. Not even you. I wanted you to live your life without eyes on your back. My uncles, my cousins, they're snakes. I knew they'd fight you for what I left. That's why I created this hidden legacy. For you. For our future children. Or anyone you choose to bless. Tears ran down my cheeks as I watched. I know you're strong. But remember, power is best when used silently. Make them think you're finished. Then rise again. I love you always. The screen went black. I sat frozen for a long time. Mr. Cole quietly pushed a folder across the desk. These are the asset details. 6 properties in Ghana, 2 in Cape Town, and a villa in the south of France. All yours. I couldn't believe it. Chijioke had given me a kingdom, not just money but independence. Security. Privacy. And all this time his family thought I was crawling. On the drive back home I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I simply looked out the window at the Lagos traffic and whispered, they have no idea what's coming. When I returned to the mansion, Adaora was waiting with Puff Puff and a cold bottle of Fanta. I told her everything. By the time I finished, her jaw had dropped. So now you're not just wealthy. You're dangerous. I chuckled. I'm not here to destroy anyone. But you could, she said. And she was right. That's when the idea came. I didn't need to sue them. I didn't need to fight. I could erase them quietly. Financially. Socially. The next day I began building something new. I registered a new business in my name, Amara Legacy Group. A female-led enterprise focused on real estate, legal support for widows, and business grants for struggling women. Adaora became the managing director. I became the silent chairwoman. I used Chijioke's offshore accounts to fund it. Not one naira touched the family's eyes. Everything was digital. Ghost-like. Hidden. Meanwhile, word began to spread that the widow is not as broken as they thought. But the real plan had just begun. One evening, I heard a knock at my mansion gate. I ignored it. Then another knock, this time louder. I went to the window and peeked through the blinds. My breath caught. It was Ngozi, Uncle Bode's daughter. The same girl who laughed while they threw my suitcases into the rain. She was crying. She found a hidden empire left just for her. But as she rose in silence, the very people who mocked her are now coming back in tears. In Chapter 6, the same niece who once called her a beggar comes begging, with a secret that could change everything. Like, comment if you believe in silent power, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping twists. Ngozi stood at my gate, tears running down her cheeks, her lipstick smeared like someone who had been crying for hours. Her once perfect wig was lopsided, and the gloss of pride that used to coat her face was gone. I didn't open the gate. I watched her from the upstairs balcony, arms folded. "Please," she cried, "Auntie Linda, please just hear me out." That was new. I had gone from that woman to Auntie Linda. Adaora appeared behind me. "Want me to send her away?" I shook my head. "No. Let's hear what she has to say." I pressed the intercom. "Wait there." I didn't let her in the house. Instead, I met her outside under the awning beside the garden. I sat. She stood. She was trembling. I didn't offer her a seat. "Talk," I said, my voice calm. Ngozi wiped her face, tried to steady herself. "My father. Uncle Bode, he's in trouble. They're all in trouble." I raised an eyebrow. "You're here for them?" She shook her head. "No. I'm here because I'm the one who took the documents." I froze. She continued. "That day we threw you out, they were searching the house for any property deeds. I found a folder hidden under your side of the wardrobe. I didn't know what it was at first. But when I showed it to my dad, he snatched it. He knew." I clenched my fist. "They knew you owned everything?" I asked. She nodded. "They knew, Auntie. But they thought they could act fast before the documents were registered. They thought if they moved fast enough, claimed it all, they could bury you under pressure." I laughed once, bitterly. "So they knew. All this while. And they still threw me out." Ngozi knelt beside me. "I was wrong. I didn't know the depth of it then. But now, everything is crashing." "Why?" She looked up. "EFCC is investigating our accounts. Dad said the mansion was under scrutiny. The cars were seized yesterday. He's been hiding at a friend's place in Ogun State." I kept my face expressionless. She lowered her head. "And there's more." I leaned in slightly. "Speak." She hesitated. Then whispered, "They're planning to forge a new set of papers. Claim you coerced Chijioke into signing everything. They want to destroy your name." The sun was high and hot above us, but a chill ran down my spine. "You came here to warn me?" "No," she said, "I came here to confess. Because I'm pregnant. And my dad said if I didn't help them, he'd cut me off." I blinked. "What does your pregnancy have to do with me?" She started crying again. "The father, he's gone. Abroad. I have nowhere to stay. They kicked me out too. My own father." There it was. Not redemption. Not guilt. Desperation. "You came here because I'm the only safe place left," I said flatly. She said nothing. I stood up. "You didn't come for justice. You came for shelter." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I believe you," I said. Her face lit up in shock. "You do?" "Yes. Because that's what snakes do. They bite, then shed their skin when they need shelter." I turned to walk away, but then paused. "If you truly want forgiveness, then do something bold. Give me every document they forged. Every detail. Every location. If you bring me proof, maybe I'll let you sleep under my roof." That night I barely slept. Adaora and I sat in the kitchen, sipping zobo as thunder cracked across the sky. "Do you believe her?" she asked. "I believe she's scared," I said. "And scared people talk." Adaora nodded. "What if they really forge something?" I smiled. Then let them try. 3 days later, Ngozi returned. She wasn't alone. She came with a brown envelope shaking in her hands. These are the copies, she said. They've already started contacting people in land registry. They're trying to bribe one of the directors. Adaora opened the envelope and gasped. Inside were scans of edited documents, poorly altered ownership papers with my name removed and replaced with Uncle Bode's. Idiots, Adaora muttered. Ngozi also handed me a voice recording. I recorded my dad and Uncle Teo discussing it. I used my phone. I stared at her. You really want to burn the bridge, don't you? Tears welled in her eyes. I want peace. That evening I called in a favor. Years ago, Chijioke had introduced me to a quiet, serious woman named Barrister Kalechi, a powerful name in the legal world with more respect than flair. She answered my call on the first ring. Linda, she said, I've been waiting for your call. You knew this day would come? She laughed. Your husband prepared for every day. I have the original tapes, the lawyer's sign-offs, the registry stamp, everything. If they want a war, we'll show them how it's fought in silence. The next morning, Uncle Bode received a letter. It wasn't from court. It wasn't from EFCC. It was from Amara Legacy Group under a private legal branch. A cease and desist. A reminder of criminal consequences for forgery, bribery, and impersonation. And one more thing. A list of land registry staff who had been placed under investigation due to Ngozi's testimony. I didn't need to call the police. I let the truth walk in and slap them on the face. Later that week, Adaora came into the living room holding her phone. You need to see this. It was a video. Grainy footage taken on someone's phone. Uncle Bode in a supermarket, being slapped by another man. Voices shouting, "Ol, thief. You wanted to forge documents." He was screaming, defending himself. But the crowd was ruthless. The video was spreading like wildfire. I watched without blinking. Adaora looked at me carefully. Are you satisfied? I shook my head. No. Why? Because this is not yet revenge. This is just the beginning. She warned them. She gave them a chance. But when they chose war, she let their own lies bury them. In next chapter, Linda doesn't just fight back. She builds something that swallows everything they thought they owned. Like, comment if you believe in strategic silence, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens when karma shows up in a mansion. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to sue. I simply needed to sign. And I started signing quietly. The first property was a fuel station in Elupaju, registered under a shell company that Uncle Bode used for cash flow. He never filed the right taxes. The land lease had expired. Adaora and I bought the land rights through a third party, a silent holding group registered in Ghana. We offered the landowner a double fee up front. The man didn't even blink. By the next week, Uncle Bode received a notice. Vacate in 30 days or face eviction. He thought it was a scam. Until his pumps were locked. Adaora walked into my room one morning with a map. Look, she said, spreading it on my desk. These red dots are every business property tied to your late husband's family. There were 12 dots. But, she smiled, only 6 are legally protected. The others are sitting on weak paperwork. And 3 are overdue on their corporate rent. I stared at the map. And pointed at one in Surulere. That one. The Surulere building was a 3-story complex that hosted a small hotel owned by Uncle Teo, the one who used to pat my back while plotting against me. We didn't go through the front door. We went through the back, financially. I hired Kenachukwu, a sharp young broker with a reputation for getting titles quietly. Get me ownership, I told him. Don't let them know I'm behind it. 10 days later the hotel was mine. That Sunday I took a quiet drive with Adaora. We didn't dress fancy. I wore my oldest wrapper and a scarf. She wore plain jeans and a hoodie. We walked into the hotel lobby. It was dim, tired, and smelled of mildew. A young receptionist looked up. Do you have a reservation? I smiled. No. But I own the building now. He laughed nervously. Sorry? Adaora handed him a sealed envelope with the legal transfer papers. Kindly inform Mr. Teyo that this property is now under new ownership. He has 14 days. The boy's mouth dropped. Back home I didn't celebrate. I poured myself a glass of chilled zobo and watched the rain hit the window. One by one, I was reclaiming everything they built on the bones of my marriage. Not out of hate, but out of principle. They used me like a stepladder. I had become a staircase. Ngozi knocked on my door that night. She looked tired, heavier. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded. She sat across from me in the sitting room. "Dad is sick," she whispered. "High BP, chest pain. I think all this stress is killing him." I was silent. She added, "He keeps saying, it was supposed to be ours. That woman ruined everything." I sipped my drink. Then said, "I didn't ruin anything. He gambled with lies. I just collected the debt." 3 days later, Adaora walked in with her laptop. "You're not going to believe this." "What?" She turned it to me. A new blog article had gone viral. Lagos widow quietly buys out properties of in-laws who abandoned her. It had images of the fuel station, the hotel, and old family photos of Chijioke's uncles at his wedding. The post didn't mention me by name, but people knew. The comment section was boiling. "This woman is the true definition of karma. You don't mess with someone who walks away quietly." She let her silence echo louder than court cases. I turned away from the screen. I didn't like attention, but I loved precision. That week, 3 of the uncles showed up at my gate. Not to attack, to beg. Uncle Bode in a faded kaftan, sweaty and pale. Uncle Teyo with swollen eyes. The third, Uncle Chuka, was already leaning on a cane. I stood at the balcony and didn't go down. "What do you want?" I asked through the speaker. They shuffled, ashamed. "We came in peace," Bode said. I stayed silent. "Please," he continued. "Let's talk. We were foolish, arrogant. We didn't know you'd be this strong." I let their words hang in the air like smoke. Then I said, "There's nothing to talk about." Later that evening, I sat in my study staring at Chijioke's old photo. He was smiling, wearing his wedding igbada. "See what they've become," I whispered. "See what I've become." I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. So I decided to change course. I asked Adaora to summon the press. 2 days later, I stood in front of cameras for the first time. No makeup. No jewelry. Just truth. I was thrown out by people I called family. I began. But I didn't return with anger. I returned with purpose. I paused. And now, I'm launching the Linda Foundation for Forgotten Widows. Our first project will house and educate abandoned women in Mushin, Ajegunle, and Iana-Ipaja. A reporter raised his hand. "And your in-laws?" I looked into the camera. Let their silence teach them what their noise never could. That night, I went to bed with peace. Until a phone call came at midnight. Adaora picked. She gasped. "What is it?" I asked. She looked at me stunned. "Ngozi just went into labor." The hospital lights felt too white, too clean, too distant from the chaos that had just exploded through my phone. Adaora's voice echoed in my head. "Ngozi is in labor. She's in General Hospital, Ikeja." We were out the door before I could blink. The drive felt endless. I didn't know why my heart was beating so fast. This wasn't my child. This wasn't my problem. But somehow it was. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was duty. Or maybe, just maybe, it was destiny unwrapping itself. By the time we arrived, Ngozi had already been rushed into delivery. She was groaning in pain, clutching her swollen belly, sweat pouring from her hairline. "Nurse?" I yelled, approaching the front desk. "Are you her guardian?" the nurse asked. I blinked. I wanted to say no, but I nodded. "Yes, I'm her mother." It slipped out of my mouth before I could stop it. The nurse handed me a clipboard. "Sign here. We need a blood relation in case of emergency." I didn't hesitate. I signed. The hours dragged. Adaora paced. I sat stiffly, palms together, staring at the green flickering of the emergency sign above the maternity doors. "Do you think she'll be okay?" Adaora asked. I nodded, though I wasn't sure. "She's strong." "Not as strong as you," Adaora replied softly. I didn't respond. Inside, something in me was cracking open, something I'd locked up the day they threw me out. The doors burst open at 4:27 a.m. The nurse walked out, beaming. She's stable. She delivered a baby boy. A strange shiver ran down my back. A baby boy. Chijioke's first grandchild. But that's not what shook me. It was what happened next. Ngozi requested to see me. I stepped into her room quietly. She was lying there, pale, exhausted, but smiling. Wrapped in her arms was a tiny brown baby, eyes closed, mouth pursed like he was judging the whole world. "He's beautiful," I whispered. She looked at me. Her voice was hoarse. "I named him." I smiled. "That's good." She nodded and then added, "I need to show you something." She reached under her blanket and pulled out a folded birth certificate. She handed it to me. I took it and unfolded the paper. My heart stopped. Name of child, Chijioke Elijah Nady. Mother's name, Ngozi Nady. Father's name, unknown. Guardian, Linda Nady. "What is this?" I asked, eyes darting over the paper. She exhaled. "I know it doesn't make sense. But I want him to carry your name. I want him to know love from the only person who stood by me." I couldn't breathe. She continued, "My own family has disowned me. They said I disgraced them. You protected me even when I didn't deserve it." Tears slid down my cheek. "But what about his real father?" She turned away. "He doesn't even know. And I won't let him near." For a long time I didn't speak. I just stared at the baby, now cooing gently in her arms. She held out the child. "Will you hold him?" I hesitated, then reached out and took him. He was warm, tiny, light in my hands, but heavy with meaning. He opened his eyes for a second. And in that moment I saw something familiar. Chijioke's eyes. Ngozi saw it too. "He looks like him," she whispered. I nodded slowly. I didn't know what this meant, but I knew life had come full circle. The next few days moved in a blur. Ngozi was discharged, and I insisted she stay in one of the guest suites at my Banana Island home. I didn't say it aloud, but I'd already made a silent decision. I was going to raise that child like my own grandson. Chijioke's legacy didn't end in betrayal. It began again in forgiveness. The press caught wind of the child's birth. They tried to spin the story. Estranged widow shelters in-law's daughter after dramatic birth. Linda Nady raises eyebrows with new air. I didn't answer them. Let them speculate. Let them wonder. Let them talk. All I cared about was the child. And the quiet look of peace on Ngozi's face whenever she nursed him. One afternoon, as I sat under the mango tree in my garden with the baby in my arms, Ngozi approached and sat beside me. "Why are you doing all this?" she asked softly. I looked down at the baby. "Because I know what it feels like to be alone. To be discarded." I paused. "And because he deserves better." She whispered, "So did you." That evening I received a message. From Barrister Kelechi. "Linda. Urgent update. There's a second will. We need to talk. Tomorrow." I froze. I hadn't even thought there could be another one. A second will? Could it be? The meeting with Barrister Kelechi wasn't in an office. It was in a quiet cafe off Adeola Odiku Street in Victoria Island. Neutral ground. I arrived first. He walked in minutes later, holding a slim black briefcase. He didn't sit immediately. He looked around, scanning for anyone who might be watching. Then he lowered himself into the seat across from me and said quietly, "What I'm about to show you was never supposed to exist." He pulled out a single envelope. No labels. No stamps. He slid it across the table to me. I picked it up and peeled it open. Inside was a folded legal document, yellowed slightly with time. I read the title. Personal Addendum to Last Will and Testament, Chijioke Nady. My hand tightened on the paper. Barrister Kelechi leaned forward. "Chijioke gave me this privately. He said it was only to be revealed if something didn't feel right after his death." My mouth went dry. What do you mean didn't feel right?" He hesitated. Then said, "He suspected his family would betray you." I scanned the contents. The document wasn't long. Just 2 pages. But what was in it changed everything. Clause 1. If at any point my wife Linda is mistreated, displaced, or humiliated by members of my family, the following assets shall revert to her name through a hidden legal channel created with the oversight of Barrister Kalechi and a silent trustee. My hands trembled. It went on to name 6 properties, 3 commercial accounts, and a private estate in Calabar I never even knew existed. At the bottom of the page he had written, "Linda, if you are reading this, then they failed you. I'm sorry. But I also came prepared. You never deserved anything less than full honor. This is me still protecting you. Even in silence." I couldn't hold back the tears. They slid down my cheeks hot and fast. Barrister Kalechi looked away politely. I whispered, "Why didn't you give this to me sooner?" He replied, "Because it only activates once legal greed appears. And now, they've shown their hands." Back home I sat in my bedroom and reread the will again. Then again. And again. Chijioke. Even in death he shielded me. I felt something twist in my chest. Grief? Gratitude? Maybe both. I didn't tell Adaora or Ngozi yet. I needed to process it first. But one thing was certain. Everything they thought they stole was never theirs to begin with. 3 days later, I stood in front of Uncle Bode's fuel station. He was shouting at some workers red in the face. "Why is the generator not working? Do you want customers to run?" I waited for him to see me. When he finally did, he squinted. "What do you want again?" he barked. "Coming to gloat?" I handed him a folded document. He opened it, eyes scanning rapidly. His face turned white. "You're lying." "No," I said quietly. "Your brother signed it. Your brother trusted me." He crumpled the paper, threw it on the ground, and stormed inside. I didn't follow. I didn't need to. My silence was loud enough. Back at home, I finally called Adaora and Ngozi into the sitting room. They sat beside me, curious. I handed them each a copy of the will. They read silently, then looked up, stunned. "He did this for you?" Ngozi whispered. "For us," I corrected. Adaora placed her hand on mine. "We could expand the Widow Foundation. Fund it properly. Buy land. Build hostels. Open skill centers." I nodded slowly. "Yes, that's exactly what we'll do." I turned to Ngozi. "And Elijah, he'll grow up with everything his father's family tried to hide from him. We'll rewrite our own legacy." That night something changed. I walked through the mansion barefoot, the moonlight glowing through the high windows. I no longer felt like a guest in my own home. I felt rooted. Oh, no. A knock at the door. At midnight, Adaora rushed down. I followed her. At the entrance stood a woman I'd never seen before. Tears in her eyes. Holding a brown folder. "I need to speak to Linda Nady," she whispered. "That's me," I said. She clutched the folder tighter. "I was Chijioke's personal banker," she said. "And I've held on to something, for a long time." Just when Linda thought the final chapter had been written, a midnight visitor brings a new truth. A secret account, perhaps, or a confession long buried. In this chapter, the mansion she built becomes the stage for one final twist that could change everything again. Like, comment if you believe in divine justice, and don't forget to subscribe. It's far from over. The woman at the door looked worn, like the truth she carried had been eating her alive. She clutched the brown folder with both hands, knuckles pale against her dark skin. "I was Chijioke's private banker," she repeated. "He trusted me with something years ago, something for you if anything ever happened to him." Adaora opened the door wider and I stepped forward. "Please come in." She nodded, stepping inside the marble foyer with hesitant feet, her eyes wide at the grandeur. We led her to the sitting room. She sat, took a deep breath, and placed the folder on the center table. "I've kept this since 5 years ago," she said, unbuttoning the flap. "He set up a secure offshore account, but what was more important was what he asked me to deliver if the time ever came." She slid a sealed envelope toward me. My hand shook as I picked it up. On the front, in Chijioke's familiar cursive, were the words, "If they ever hurt her." I opened it slowly. The first thing I saw was a letter. His handwriting. His scent. I felt like he was sitting beside me again. I began to read silently. "My love, If you are holding this, then it means the unthinkable has happened. It means I am gone. And worse, it means my family failed you. I always feared they would. You were too bright for them. Too kind. And they've always been ruled by fear and greed. So, I did what I always should have done. I planned for your safety. There is an account under your name. Cayman Islands. 11.6 million US dollars. Untouched. Secured. Legal. It's yours. More importantly, it's for whatever you decide to do with your life after me. If you build strong. If you heal fully. And if you ever feel alone, know that you were never unloved. Chijioke. My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. Ngozi reached across the couch and placed her hand on mine. Adaora just stared, eyes wide with shock. The banker cleared her throat gently. I've kept the account active. The login credentials are inside the envelope. She pulled out a slim USB stick and handed it to me. This is everything. I whispered, why didn't he ever tell me? She gave a sad smile. He said you deserved peace while he was alive. But he feared they wouldn't give you that when he was gone. I held the USB in my palm like it was made of fire. This wasn't just money. It was freedom. It was insurance. It was love, folded into numbers, documents, and offshore clauses. And suddenly, I knew what I had to do. 2 weeks later, I walked into the very land registry office where the uncles had forged the early will submissions. This time, I wasn't there to correct anything. I was there to buy. I pulled out titles, deeds, transfer orders. I used a portion of the hidden funds to purchase key lands they were trying to develop illegally under Chijioke's name. One by one, I took back what they'd tried to bury me with. Then I turned around and gifted the titles to a foundation I created in my late husband's name. The Chijioke Nadi Foundation for Widowed Women and Orphan Children. The day I launched the foundation, I invited every family member, both enemies and allies. They came. Curious, judgmental, nervous. They didn't know what to expect. I stood on stage, dressed in white lace with gold embroidery, my hair up, face calm. Ngozi sat beside me holding baby Elijah. Adaora stood behind me, strong like a shadow of hope. I stepped to the microphone. Good evening, I began. There was a hush. I was thrown out of my home in Ajegunle. But I built a new one in Banana Island. Murmurs. But homes aren't only made of bricks and land, they're made of justice. Of legacy. I paused. I forgive those who tried to destroy me. But I will never forget. Gasp. I continued, this foundation will protect women like me, like my daughter, like my mother before her. And no amount of family politics will ever bury a woman again. Applause erupted. At the back of the hall, Uncle Bode stood still, arms folded. I met his eyes. He didn't look angry. He looked defeated. The woman they thought they'd discarded had become their mirror. And they couldn't stand the reflection. That night, back at home, I sat by the balcony with Elijah sleeping in my arms. Ngozi joined me with a soft blanket. You did it, she said. I looked out at the stars. No, I said gently. We did. A soft breeze passed. I could almost hear Chijioke's laughter. I was in the middle of reviewing the next phase of the Foundation's outreach program when Ngozi burst into the room. Her eyes were wide, voice trembling. Mama. Someone is here to see you. I glanced up from the documents. Who? She hesitated. Then whispered, It's Kunal. The name hit me like a slap. Kunal Nadi. Chijioke's cousin. The one who was supposed to be out of the country for years. The one Chijioke once said was more dangerous than all the uncles combined. Because Kunal didn't just want money, he wanted control. And now he was back. I stood slowly, heart beating fast. Where is he? Ngozi pointed to the front gate. He's waiting. Says he won't leave unless you speak with him. I gathered myself and walked out. Kunal stood tall in a crisp agbada, dark glasses hiding his eyes, lips curved in a small smirk. Linda, he greeted coolly. Looking wealthy. I kept my face neutral. Kunal. He chuckled. Ah, straight to the point. I missed that about you. I folded my arms. Why are you here? He tilted his head. To claim what's mine. He stepped closer. Your husband owed me, Linda. Big time. Business deals, debts, family things. I kept quiet while the uncles fought like goats. But now that you've built something worthwhile, Banana Island Estate, a whole foundation, I'm here to collect. I stared him down. Collect what? He leaned in. Everything. That night I barely slept. I tossed and turned, Connell's words replaying in my head. He had no legal right. No claim. But men like Connell didn't need the law. They used fear. Threats. Manipulation. And he was smart. He'd probably been watching from the shadows this whole time, waiting for everything to fall into place, then striking when it did. I sat up in bed and reached for my phone. Barrister Kelechi picked up on the second ring. Connell's back, I said simply. There was silence. Then a heavy sigh. I was afraid of this. The next morning I received an envelope under my gate. No stamp. No address. Inside, pictures. Surveillance photos. Me. Ngozi. Idora. Elijah. Taken without our knowledge. In markets. Driving. Even one inside the church. At the bottom, scribbled in red marker. You built a legacy. Don't make me burn it down. My hand shook. I called security. Upgraded everything. I called the police, but they said without an actual threat they couldn't act. I felt like I was back in Ajegunle again. Vulnerable. Only this time I had more to lose. I held an emergency meeting with my board. Ngozi Adora Kelechi and the new COO of the foundation. He's not bluffing, I said. He's watching us. Kelechi nodded. And if he's watching, he's planning. We must be proactive. But how? Adora asked. He's not asking for a bribe or court settlement. He just wants chaos. I stared at the pictures. We give him a stage. Then we pull the curtain. 3 days later, Connell received a formal invitation to speak at our next foundation gala. Yes, I invited him. Let the lion walk into the house thinking it's his. I had a plan. I always had a plan now. And this one would strip him bare in front of the entire elite of Lagos. But he didn't know that. Not yet. He thought she was weak. He thought fear would bring her to her knees. But in this chapter, Linda invites the enemy to her own table and turns the gala into a battlefield of truth. Like, comment if you believe evil has an expiry date, and don't forget to subscribe. What Connell walks into will leave him shaking. The gala shimmered under chandeliers imported from Italy. The event hall in Victoria Island was dressed in gold and navy, with tables lined with top dignitaries, oil magnates, ambassadors, and socialites. Photographers clicked. Cameras rolled. But my eyes were on only one person. Connell. He walked in wearing a white agbada with gold embroidery, too much gold, like a man trying too hard. He looked smug, flashing his teeth at everyone as if he owned the place. He didn't. Not tonight. He walked up to me. Linda, he said smoothly. This is impressive. I smiled. Glad you could make it. He leaned in. What's the catch? I smiled wider. You'll see. I turned away before he could read the tremor in my voice. Because underneath my calm, my heart was pounding. I took the stage at 8:35 p.m. sharp as planned. Behind me stood a long black screen, lights dimmed. Connell sat near the front. I began. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight isn't just a celebration of growth, it's a celebration of truth. Applause. We've come far since Ajegunle. But success without justice is hollow. The audience quieted. Connell leaned forward. I nodded to the technician. The screen behind me lit up. It was footage. A hidden camera had been planted in a boardroom 2 weeks ago. Connell was seen pacing, speaking to 2 crooked estate agents. She'll fold, he said. We'll spook her, then use the media to smear her image. Once she's unstable, we'll leak fake allegations and seize her holdings. Gasps echoed across the room. Connell froze. I turned to the crowd. That's the man many of you welcomed here tonight. The cousin of my late husband. The one who claims to value family. Murmurs turned to fury. But I wasn't done. I clicked again. Another screen lit up. This time, documents. Emails. Bank logs. Showing illegal fund transfers Connell made from the Nady family business years ago. fraud, embezzlement, property theft, real crimes. Uncle Bode's wife fainted. I held the microphone tightly. I gave him a stage, I said. Now I give him the door. Security walked to Connell's side. He stood up abruptly, face twisted. You planned this. I cut him off. You threatened my son. You stalked my staff. You sent photos to my home. You left a note saying you'd burn it all down. I walked down from the stage as security surrounded him. Here's the truth, Connell, I said. You thought I was weak because I was a woman. Because I mourned. Because I chose peace. I paused. But tonight you see who I really am. He was escorted out. And I turned to the hall. Cheers erupted. Not because I humiliated a man. But because I stood, for myself, for widows, for women who have been hunted for simply surviving. I had survived. And now I thrived. Later that night, Ngozi and Adaora stood beside me as press crowded the exit. One reporter shouted, Mrs. Nady, how do you feel after what just happened? I smiled, arm around Elijah. I feel like I finally buried the past. The gala fallout made national headlines. By morning, every blog in Lagos had a new angle. Widow outs cousin at gala. Connell Nady's secret crimes revealed live. Foundation leader destroys family ties to save her legacy. But while the city buzzed with praise, something inside me remained uneasy. Because just before Connell was taken away, I saw him whisper to a guard. Just a name. A name that rattled me to my core. Amaka. My husband's ex. The one before me. The one he cut off years before our wedding. The one who once said, you took what was mine. I hadn't seen her in over a decade. But Connell's whisper, it wasn't a threat. It was a warning. 2 days later, a bouquet of blood-red roses appeared on my doorstep. No note. No sender. Just like old times. Because back when I first married Chijioke, Amaka had sent the same bouquet every month until he personally went to her house and told her to stop. Now it was back. Ngozi found it and brought it inside. Who would send? But I already knew. I whispered, she's here. I tightened security again. Cameras. Protocols. Rotating guards. But nothing prepared me for what came next. Because sometimes the scariest attacks aren't physical. They're reputational. That evening Adaora called me, voice shaking. Mama, she said. You need to see this. She sent me a screenshot. A post. Circulating on TikTok, X, formerly Twitter, and WhatsApp groups. A photo of me, crying at the original Ajegunle eviction. Head wrapped. Eye swollen. Carrying baby Elijah. The caption? This woman stole her husband from his fiancée and now pretends to be a saint. Underneath were comments. Dozens. Hundreds. Dragging me. Questioning my morality. Calling me fake. A fraud. And one anonymous account commenting under every thread. She doesn't deserve what she's built. Not after what she did to me. Signed, A. I shut off my phone. I knew what was happening. Connell had lit the match. But Amaka was the fire. She didn't want money. She wanted humiliation. And she was good at it. Because she knew something I had buried for years. Something I never told Ngozi or Adaora. That before I met Chijioke, we were already entangled in chaos. She and I had once been neighbors. We'd once worked the same salon. And when he chose me over her, it didn't just end a romance. It ended a friendship. One she never forgave. That night, I sat on the floor in my Banana Island bedroom, tears rolling down my cheeks. Not because I feared her. But because I feared losing everything I'd built through grace. I feared being turned into a headline. Again. The next day she came. Uninvited. Escorted by security. But I told them to let her in. She walked in wearing a red jumpsuit, lips glossy, hair pressed, and smile sharp as a razor. Long time, Linda, she said, looking around my home. Why now? I asked softly. She laughed. You embarrassed Connell. So he called me. But truth is, I was coming anyway. She sat without permission. I don't want your house. I don't want your foundation. I stared. Then what do you want? She leaned in. Your piece. She pulled out a flash drive. This has every voice note. Every email. Every photo from our years of war. If I leak this, you'll be just another trending topic. My chest tightened. She smirked. But I won't. I blinked. Why? She stood slowly. Because I finally realized, you didn't steal him. She paused. I lost him. A tear rolled down her cheek. And I never healed. I punished you because I couldn't punish the truth. She placed the flash drive on my table. I'm done, Linda. She walked out quietly. And I sat there broken. Not from fear. But from unexpected grace. Because for the first time in years, my biggest rival gave me peace, instead of pain. And I never saw it coming. Just when it looked like war, forgiveness walked in. But peace always costs something. In next chapter, the final chapter, Linda must decide whether to close the past for good, or finally reveal the biggest secret of all. Like, comment if you believe peace can come from the most unlikely places. And don't forget to subscribe, the end is near. I stared at the flash drive Amaka left behind. It sat silently on my table, so small, yet so powerful. That drive didn't just contain gossip. It held pieces of me, raw, unfiltered memories from a time I swore never to revisit. Late at night, I locked my bedroom door and inserted the flash into my laptop. Her voice came on first. Then mine. Old voice notes. From salons. From backrooms. From days when we were friends, then rivals. Then photos. Chijioke. Smiling with me in one frame. With her in another. A decade ago, but it all felt like yesterday. I sat in silence, tears falling freely. Not from regret. But from release. In the morning I called a meeting. My final one. Ngozi. Idora. Elijah. My staff. My board. Journalists. Community leaders. All gathered inside the newly built event center named after Chijioke. When I stepped onto that stage, the same one Kunnel once faced, I knew what I had to do. Not just to end this story, but to own it. Good morning, I began, voice steady. I've stood on many stages. I've been praised, attacked, celebrated, and dragged. Soft laughter. But today I choose to tell a story no one asked for. One you didn't see coming. The room leaned in. I continued. Years ago, before Banana Island, before the foundation, before I was Madam Linda, I was just a girl in a salon in Ajegunle, working beside my friend. Her name was Amaka. Murmurs. Yes, the same Amaka. I paused. We loved the same man. He chose me. I moved on. She didn't. And for years we battled in silence. But last week she gave me something. I held up the flash drive. A chance to end it all. I played a single clip. Just one. Amaka's voice, tearful, saying, You didn't steal him. I lost him. Silence. I looked at the crowd. That's what healing sounds like. It doesn't always come with a ribbon. Sometimes it comes quietly. Like rain. I paused. And now it's my turn to heal. I reached into my bag and pulled out a brown envelope. A legal deed. I've signed over the entire Ajegunle development project to the women who still live there. Free housing. Healthcare. Education grants. In honor of every woman who has fought battles without headlines. Applause erupted. But I wasn't done. I turned to Elijah, now almost a teenager, seated beside Ngozi. I took a deep breath. There's something else I've never said. Not out of shame. But protection. I faced the crowd again. When Chijioke and I separated temporarily years before he died, I was alone. I was hurt. And in that short season, I had an encounter with someone else. I thought it was over. But it wasn't. Gasp. I later found out I was pregnant. With Elijah. The room froze. I turned to Elijah, who stared at me wide-eyed. I never told anyone because I feared how it would affect him. But now I want him to know, he is not a mistake. He is my redemption. Silence turned to tears. From my staff. From Adora. Even from the journalist who came for scandal but stayed for truth. Elijah stood, walked to me and hugged me tightly. Mama, he whispered. Thank you for being brave. And in that moment, I knew I was free. Truly free. Months passed. The story changed. Not from drama. But from dignity. The headlines read, Widow turns legacy into lifeline. Foundation leader gives back everything she earned. Amaka left Lagos. Peacefully. Kunal stayed in jail. Silently. And I began again. This time not as a survivor, but as a woman who finally owned every part of her story, flaws and all. And that's how it ends, not with revenge but with truth. Linda's mansion in Banana Island was built with more than bricks. It was built with scars, strength, and second chances. If this story touched your heart, showed you the quiet power of healing, and reminded you that your story still matters, like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more tales that honor every woman's journey.